Shalom. It is our privilege to share with you from God's Word. This is Deep Springs Baptist Church. And we're going to begin a study on Messianic Christology. And this is based off of the book of the same title by Dr. Arnold Fruchtenbaum. Actually, I think the name of the book has changed now. I think he's renamed it as Hamashiach, which means the Messiah. But basically it's expectations of the Jewish Messiah from the Old Testament. So we're going to look at what the Torah says about the Messiah, which that's the first 5 books of the law: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And then we'll look at what the prophets have to say, and then what the writings have to say. And so I think you will find it's a great benefit. It will also not only to become familiar with these scriptures, but it will help you in your witnessing as we look at the expectations and the prophecies of the Messiah and how Jesus fulfilled all of those with such precision and accuracy. So let's just jump right in. The first Messianic prophecy, if you will, from in the Bible is Genesis 3:15. Now you should already know this, that Genesis 3 is the fall of man. That's when Adam and Eve sinned in the garden. Now, in Genesis 3:15, we have the first mention of a Messiah. Some people call it the gospel in Genesis, but God is actually talking to the serpent here, and he says, Genesis 3:15, "And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel." Now, the fact that Moses traced this genealogy through the woman tells us that there's something very different about the Messiah. Now, there's genealogical lists like in Genesis 5 and 10 and so on, and most of them are going to be dominated by male names. And we know that the seed comes from the father, from the male. But Moses tells us, or he records for us, that this Messiah, this promised one, that he's going to be the seed of the woman. Okay? Now, so something is going to necessitate that the ancestry be traced through the mother. Now, we're not going to hear any more. Moses doesn't give any further explanation, and you're not going to get any more really about this until Isaiah 7, when it describes the virgin birth. But there are hints here in Genesis 3:15 that the Messiah is something's different about him because of the seed of the woman. This is a highly unusual phrase to use. It also lets us know that he will not be an angel. He's not going to be, or simply God, as if God were simple, but not only God and not an angel, but rather that he will be a God-man. He will be the perfect God-man. The theologians refer to this as the hypostatic union. And I don't fully understand it. And I don't think you have to fully understand it just to believe it, but that Jesus was fully God and yet fully man at the same time. Now, this prophecy mentions the bruising of the head of the serpent. Now, when you get to the book of Revelation, the identity of the serpent is revealed, although you should be able to figure it out before you get to Revelation. But Revelation 12:9 says, "And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and the angels were cast out with him." So the identity of the serpent is revealed in Revelation 12. There's a beautiful symmetry between Genesis and Revelation. If you've ever studied both books, you know that it's kind of like the two bookends of the Bible as things come to a climax. Now, the prophecy says that the Messiah's heel would be bruised. Now, that happened at the cross, but it would not be eternally fatal. Now, the crushing of the serpent's head, however, would be an eternally fatal blow. The crushing of the serpent's head began with Jesus' death and resurrection. Hebrews 2, verse 14 describes that. It says, "For as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same," talking about Jesus, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is the devil. So ironically enough, through Christ's death, he destroyed him that had the power of death, and that is the devil. So there is a sense in which the cross destroyed the devil. But if you read the newspaper or watch the news or just look around you, you know that the devil is still alive and well, and he's not bound, as the amillennialists declare, but he is going to and fro, as Peter says, as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Paul sees the crushing of the serpent's head finally as still future. You look in Romans 16:20. Romans 16:20, Paul says, "And the God of peace shall bruise Satan under your feet shortly." The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you. Amen. That gives you some idea as to how God views time, because it's been about 2,000 years since Paul wrote that, roughly, not exactly. But he says shortly. We have to remember that a day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day. Now, ultimately, in Revelation 20, verse 10, we see that the devil is thrown into the lake of fire, along with the false prophet and the beast, who have been there for 1,000 years already. So that just shows you that the Bible does not teach annihilation for the wicked, but rather eternal punishment. And that may not sit well with some of you, but that is what the Bible teaches. And so that's what we have to proclaim, regardless of how that may or may not offend our sensibilities. Now, Genesis 4 is going to echo the promise of Genesis 3:15. Now, the New American Standard Version, Genesis 4:1 says, "Now the man had relations with Eve, his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Cain." The name Cain means acquired. She had acquired this child. And she said, "I have gotten a man-child." And then in italics it says, "with the help of the Lord." Now the King James says, "And Adam knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord." Now, Dr. Fruchtenbaum is a he's a Hebrew scholar. He's a Messianic Jew. And he says the literal translation of the Hebrew is this: "And the man knew Eve, his wife, she conceived and bare Cain, and said, quote, I have gotten a man, Jehovah, end quote. Again, she bare his brother, Abel." So the same construction is used for bearing, for the birth of Abel, and his name means vanity, by the way. So, according to Fruchtenbaum, and I would appeal to other Jewish scholars here, I'm not a Hebrew scholar, but I do trust Dr. Fruchtenbaum here, that the literal translation is that the man knew his wife, Eve, she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man, Jehovah. So, according to Fruchtenbaum and other Jewish scholars, Eve actually thought that Cain was going to be the Messiah. She understood, what I'm trying to get you to see is that she interpreted Genesis 3:15, that the seed of the woman would be a God-man, that he would be now I don't know that she fully understood the hypostatic union, but that her understanding of that was that he would be God and man. And so she says, I've gotten a man, Jehovah. Now you talk about parental disappointment. She thinks that Cain's going to be the Messiah, and of course he's the first murderer in the first family there. No wonder she named Abel Vanity, which just shows that, hey, the world is a broken place. We've got a long ways to go. So now you get to Genesis 5:21. Now, in Genesis 5, you have these genealogies, and Genesis 5:21, it says that Enoch lived 65 years and begat Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. This mysterious translation of Enoch. And Methuselah lived 187 years and begat Lamech. And Methuselah lived after he begat Lamech 782 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the years of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died, the oldest man in the Bible. That's where we get that phrase, oh, he's as old as Methuselah. And Lamech lived 182 years and begat a son. And this is where it gets interesting. And he called his name Noah, saying, this same shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord has cursed. Now Methuselah, his name, he was prophetically named by Enoch. And Methuselah, his name means when he dies, it will come. Now in the Hebrew language, there is no neuter. So it literally reads, when he dies, he will come. Now we know that the prophecy refers to the flood, because you can do the math and see that the year that Methuselah died is the year that the flood came. However, Lamech understood the name of his father to be prophetic, but he apparently thought it referred to his son, Noah. When he dies, he will come, thinking that Noah would be the Messiah. Now, you can also do the math and see that Lamech was 56 years old when Adam died. It's amazing these guys had these long lifespans. So Lamech would have had firsthand information about the Garden of Eden, or from the Garden of Eden, from Adam. And so, he would have told Lamech, hey, there's a son coming. There's a Messiah. There's a God-man that's coming. Now we can connect the dots and see how Lamech expressed his own messianic hope here. Notice what he says about his son Noah. Now the word Noah means rest. He thought that he was going to bring rest. Now, King James says comfort. He will comfort us concerning the work and the toil of our hands. And he says, because of the ground which the Lord hath cursed. So he thought that his son would remove the curse that was in the earth because of Adam's sin. So clearly he understood the Messiah as removing the curse. So his basic theology was correct, but he misapplied it. The Messiah was going to come, but Noah would not be that man. And then when you get to Genesis chapter 9, you have this strange incident where Noah plants a vineyard. He gets drunk, and then he's naked in his tent, and the two sons cover the nakedness, and then the other son goes out and broadcasts it. And so there are a lot of similarities between Adam and Noah. They both come out of watery chaos into a new world. They're both told to fill the earth, to multiply and fill the earth. I think they both have three named sons. With Adam, it's Cain and Abel, and then Seth. Now they had others, but three named sons. And then Noah had Shem, Ham, and Japheth. There's a sin with fruit. Adam takes from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Noah gets drunk off of the fruit of the vine. Both result in nakedness. Of course, Adam is cognizant of his nakedness after he eats of the tree. Noah is literally naked in his tent. God covers Adam with the skins of the animal. Shem and Japheth cover Noah. And then in both instances, there's a prophetic utterance. In Genesis 3:15, God talks about the seed of the woman crushing the head of the serpent. And then in Genesis 9, I think Noah says, blessed be the Lord God of Shem. So we get a revelation then that Shem would be the line that the Messiah would come through. And again, Shem being the ancestor of Terah, who's the ancestor of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Judah, and so forth. So, but it's interesting. Sorry, we got all these shadows and the sunlight coming in. It's about 10:30 in the morning when I'm recording this. So we're getting these sun rays coming through the blinds. Now, but Genesis 9 lets us know, because of all the stuff going on, that Noah's not the Messiah. He's coming, but Noah's not the Messiah. Now, and that helps us to understand Genesis 6. Now, I have covered Genesis 6 in other places, so I'm not going to go through that again. It's a highly controversial topic, but what I believe, and Dr. Fruchtenbaum, as well as many other reputable scholars, men like Dr. John MacArthur and so forth, it's not a fringe view, that what's happening in Genesis 6 when the sons of God intermarry with the daughters of men this is Satan's attempt to corrupt the seed of the woman, because remember, the seed of the woman is going to be the one who crushes his head or bruises his head. And so Genesis 6 is Satan's, his attempt to counter the Messiah and corrupt the human race so that the Messiah won't come. And Noah is preserved. I think in the King James it says that Noah was perfect in his generations. Well, we know he wasn't morally perfect because he got drunk in Genesis 9. But many scholars believe it speaks of his DNA, that he had not been corrupted by this angelic invasion. And again, it's a controversial subject, not one I want to get into here, but just to show you the Messianic expectation is that the Messiah would be a human being. He would be the seed of the woman. And by the way, the angel view in Genesis 6 was the predominant view in the days of the Lord Jesus. So, and then the apostles, when the Bible was written. Only in recent times has the other theory. If you're interested in the other theory, it's that the sons of Seth married the daughters of Cain. And so that's the Sethite theory. But if you'll rightly divide the word of God, you'll see that it literally makes no sense. Plus the text says literally that the sons of God, Elohim, married the daughters of men. Literally in Hebrews, the daughters of Adam. So both Seth and Cain's daughters were both the daughters of men. Anyway, so let's move on now. Next we have Genesis 22, which reveals that the Messiah will be the seed of Abraham. Now in Genesis 22:17, God says that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. Verse 18 says, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. Now, this is the Abrahamic covenant. It's one of the 8 covenants of the Bible. I would encourage you to study that. I've got teaching on this channel. If you have not done so, you ought to subscribe, like, and share this with your friends if it's a blessing to you. If not, just keep on scrolling. Now, seed, the word seed is always used in the singular, but it can be an absolute singular, referring to one person, one individual, or it can be a collective singular, in this case, Israel. So in verse 17, when he talks about multiplying Abraham's seed as the stars of the heaven and the sand, obviously he's talking about collective, Israel, the many descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But in verse 18, it is clearly singular, but it's referring to one individual, which is the Messiah. Now we know this from our New Testament revelation, because in Galatians 3:16, Paul interprets it this way. He says, now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He saith not unto seeds, plural, as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Christ. Christ is the Greek Christos, which is the equivalent to the Hebrew Messiah or Mashiach. So Genesis 22:18 is referring to the Messiah, according to Paul in the New Testament. So within the Abrahamic covenant, the seed of the woman, Genesis 3:15, is now narrowed to being a descendant of one particular branch of humanity, and that is a descendant of Abraham. A second point of the prophecy includes the Gentiles being blessed by the seed. That's not elaborated until later on, like in Isaiah. But it helps you understand also why Matthew's gospel opens up with a genealogy that begins with Abraham, because that is the Messianic promise. He's the seed of the woman and also the seed of Abraham. Genesis 49:10 also reveals that it is the seed of Judah, one of Jacob's 12 sons. I think he's the fourth son. Genesis 49:10 says, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. That's the King James Version. Now, according to Dr. Fruchtenbaum, the King James obscures the real meaning because they translate Shiloh, giving the appearance as that's a proper name. He says the word is in fact a possessive pronoun, and he thinks that the NIV, the New International Version, is closest to the original. The NIV reads it this way: the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs, rather than Shiloh, shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his. So, to summarize, previously the Messiah has been declared to be a man, seed of the woman. He's descended from Abraham, according to Genesis 22. Now it's limited even farther, and now he's a descendant of Judah. A second point is that Messiah is going to be a king. The scepter and the staff denote rulership and royalty and authority. Thirdly, and this is interesting, the Messiah must come before Judah loses its tribal identity, because the Messiah is going to have to prove that he's from the tribe of Judah. Now later on, we're not going to deal with this today because we're just dealing with the law. But later on, we find out he's got to be a descendant of David. Okay? Now, there's a time period, so there's a window of opportunity here. The Messiah has to come before 70 AD, because all of the genealogical records proving the ancestry, they were housed in the temple. So when the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, all of the genealogical records, so within 2 generations, the tribal identities was lost. Now, it doesn't mean that they're unknown to God. So don't buy into this lost tribes of Israel stuff that the cults love to use to prove that that the Americans are the Israelites, or the British are, or whatever. And that's a whole other discussion. Because you get to Revelation 7 and you find out that the 144,000 are from all the tribes, and God hasn't lost any of them. But after 70 AD, it would be impossible to prove. You know, if somebody were to claim to be the Messiah, well, what's the first thing a Jew is going to ask? Well, is he a Jew? I mean, is he a descendant of Abraham? Is he a descendant of Judah? Is he a descendant of King David? And so the Messiah would have to come before 70 AD, is the point. All right. Next are the predictions of Balaam or Balaam. Found that in Numbers 24. Balaam is an interesting character. I call him a prophet for a prophet. He's a kind of a prophet for hire. Now, there are a number of, that we call them oracles, in that Balaam, every time he's hired by the king of Moab to Balak to come and curse Israel. But every time he goes to curse, he opens his mouth and God takes it over and he pronounces a blessing on the Jews, because you can't curse what God has blessed. Now, the fourth oracle is the one we're concerned with for our purposes of study. Numbers 24, and thought I had it in my notes here, but apparently I don't. So let's find verse 17. Balaam says, I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and destroy all the children of Sheth. So, Balaam begins his oracles by emphasizing the unique nature of Israel. He then went on to say that this nation, though scattered at first, would have a unique king to rule over it. He finishes here by declaring the awesome power of this king and noting that his coming would be heralded by the appearance of a star. The significance of chapter 24 should not be missed. Having completed his work, Balaam, the Babylonian astrologer, returns to my people. You can read that in verse 25. It says Balaam rose up and went and returned to his place. That would be Mesopotamia, and Balak to went his way. And to his place. With him, he takes the prophecy of the star, announcing the birth of a unique and powerful king who will rule over Israel. Later generations of Babylonian astrologers recorded these words and kept watch for the star. They went and found the newborn king and worshipped him. Okay, and that's where the wise men come into play, or the magi. You ever wonder why these wise men are coming from the east? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one is Balaam's prophecy. And Balaam is from Mesopotamia. Deuteronomy 23:4 says, because they met you not with bread and with water in the way when you came forth out of Egypt, because they hired against thee Balaam the son of Beor of Pethor of Mesopotamia, that area between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, or Babylon, to curse thee. So you had Balaam's oracle about the star coming from Jacob. And so that's one reason. And another reason is Daniel. Remember Daniel was he was part of the exiles of the royal seat of Judah, and he was exiled in Babylon, in Mesopotamia, in Persia, that area. And Daniel 2:48, Daniel has interpreted the dream for Nebuchadnezzar, and he saved the life not only of Daniel and his friends, but of all the wise men. Nebuchadnezzar had threatened to kill them all. And it says, Daniel 2:48, then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole prince of Babylon and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. And no doubt, it's not recorded, but no doubt many of those wise men probably became believers in the one true God because of Daniel and how God used him. And also you have the prophecy of the 70 weeks. I wrote a book on that. It's available on Amazon called From Babylon to Beyond. Check that out for further study. But which told the time frame when the Messiah would come. And I'm not going to get into all that here today because we're running short on time. But to summarize Balaam's prophecy, a star shall come forth from Jacob, and coupled with the star is a scepter, which represents kingship. So the Messiah will be a king. Finally, for our study today of the Torah's messianic predictions is Deuteronomy 18:15. It says that the Lord thy God will raise up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thee, of thy brethren, like unto me. Unto him you shall hearken. So this last prophecy, messianic truth prediction, is that God's going to raise up a prophet like Moses. Okay, so as you're reading through the Gospels, and you see a lot of similarities between the things that Moses did and Jesus, you have to understand that God is demonstrating to his people that Jesus is this prophet. He is the prediction. You know, so when Jesus is feeding the 5,000, Okay. It's reminiscent of Moses, and they're talking about the manna, and Jesus said, look, Moses didn't give you the manna, my Father did, and I am the true bread which comes down from heaven. And that's just one such example. There's many, many others. But there's a prophet like unto Moses. Now, what kind of prophet was Moses? Well, Numbers 12:5, Aaron and Miriam got into trouble because they were speaking disparagingly of Moses. Numbers 12:5, it says, and the Lord came down in the pillar of the cloud, stood in the door of the tabernacle, and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forth. I bet that was terrifying. And he said, now hear my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak to him in a dream. My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all my house. With him I will speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, not in dark speeches. And the similitude of the Lord shall he behold. Wherefore then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? Be careful talking against God's anointed leaders. That's another story for another time. But so, the Messiah fits the Mosaic mold in 4 areas, according to Fruchtenbaum. And that Moses was a prophet. He, in a sense, was a redeemer to lead the people out of Egypt. He was a mediator. Remember, God at first was speaking to all the people, at Mount Sinai, but it was so terrifying that they said, no, we don't want that anymore. We want Moses, talk to Moses, and then Moses can talk to us. So he's a mediator in that sense. Also an intercessor. Just go through the Exodus experience and look at how many times Moses saved their hide when God was ready to wipe them out, but Moses falls on his face and begins to pray for the people. And that's a great lesson for every leader. When you're frustrated with the people that you're leading, when they're rebelling, not listening to God or listening to you, it's not the time to get a stick out and beat them up. Get down on your face and pray to God that God will take care of it. And he will. So, a summary of all we've talked about here. Summary of Messianic Christology from the Torah or the law. Number 1, you got the seed. Okay. First, it's the seed of the woman. Then it's narrowed to the seed of Abraham. Then it's narrowed to the seed of Judah. We learned that the Messiah would be both God and man. Now, Eve understood that, but she wrongly applied it. She thought Cain would be the Messiah, but at least she did understand that he would be fully God and fully man. Number 3, the kingly aspect that we see, the scepter, the symbol of the scepter in Judah, and also in Balaam's prophecy, the staff and the scepter denotes royalty. Fourthly, a prophet like Moses, and we just went over those aspects. 5, the removal of the curse. Remember Lamech's prophecy or his proclamation. He thought that Noah would remove the curse. And of course, he was wrong about Noah being the Messiah, but he was right that the Messiah would remove the curse. And then finally, the hint of the virgin birth. And that goes back to Genesis 3:15, where the seed is reckoned of the woman and not of the man. So I hope you've enjoyed this. We've got a lot more to cover, God willing, in the weeks ahead. But let this strengthen your faith as you believe and trust that Jesus is the Messiah. So until next time, I bid you shalom. God bless you. Take care.